everyone, it's me, Ryan Turford. I'm in my house, and you're listening to the most PlayStation-rific podcast on the internet. It's the PlayStation Drive. I'm on a Discord call with my friend Matt Sawinski, and on our journey today, oh my god, all of the September games are here right now, and we're playing them, and the September update for PlayStation is here as well, so jump on into the PlayStation Drive. Ba-ba-da-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-dow.
Hello, Ryan. How are you doing on this fine Thursday?
Oh, I'm doing well. I'm a little scatterbrained, as Matt knows, because it's not like this is not our third or fourth take at this point. But you know what? We're going to get through it. It's going to be fine. It's going to be a lovely, lovely day. I'm very excited to talk about PlayStation with you today, my friend. How are you doing?
I'm well. I'm ready to go. I've been playing a bunch of cool stuff this week, and it's a good time to be a gamer right now, Ryan. It's not a good time for time.
Yeah, that's true. Because, time's overrated anyways, Matt. Please.
Yeah, who needs it?
Who needs it? So, of course, before we get into the PlayStation Drive proper, of course, we got to clean the garage a little bit, get some of those dust bunnies out of there. So, of course, if you like what we do, and you want to support the show, there's a number of ways to do that. Number one, you can subscribe to us on your podcast feed of choice, whether it's Google Podcasts or Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We're on all the things, so check us out on your podcast feed of choice. Also, you can check out our beautiful faces every single week over on YouTube, youtube.com/YouMeCapri, and because we put up a video version of the show every single week up there. Last but not least, of course, if you want early access to this and all of our shows, patreon.com/YouMeCapri is how you do that. Throw a little tip in the old tip jar, and out comes content. So there we go. That's all the things. But before we get into the show as well, Matt, and this kind of segues into what we were playing, you put up a review this week on the PlayStation Drive feed. So tell me about that real quick.
Yeah, I had the honor of doing an extra mile with Andrew over from We the Nerdy. We talked all about Deathloop. I ripped through it over the weekend, and I can't stop thinking about it even still, and I've messed around with multiplayer and stuff. So if you're looking for our full half an hour discussion, make sure you go check out that extra mile because we had a great time doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had a lot of great feedback from people listening to it who kind of reached out to me and said, well, this is awesome. And I know us here, I know Sean and I are pretty proud of kind of the work you guys did. And I know you and Andrew actually had a really good chemistry together. And I think it was a really good review. So definitely, folks at home, if you haven't checked out the review of Deathloop, definitely go check that out, especially if you're interested in the game. It is definitely worth checking out. And well, sticking with that, Matt, we should talk about Deathloop real quick because it's on your list of things that you played this week. And the other game we both kind of played, so we should start there. I think you finished it now, right? Because I know when you guys record the review, you're basically about done, but you weren't finished yet.
Yeah, I finished it literally 2 hours after we recorded that, just because of the way that timing broke out and when we were able, especially giving you time to edit. I wasn't able to get through it, but I finished it about 2 hours later. My total playtime was about 13 hours. Which I'm seeing a lot of other people quote 20 to 25 plus, which awesome. Yeah. I guess it is possible to finish it in less than that. I took about 13. Loved it. I know I was a little sour last week, talking about the PlayStation Showcase with that other trailer. As getting into the game, Ryan, in the first half an hour, I immediately forgot all of that. Oh my God, Deathloop again. And I was so immersed in the world. The game is so good. It's so much fun. My final loop, it took me, I would say, about an hour. And I don't think it was one of the most anxiety inducing spells of gaming I've had in a long time, because as anybody knows who's checked out the game, Juliana can invade. And I was pretty shocked because I had quite a number of player invasions even, before launch. Yeah. And somebody invaded me on my final mission, on the last section of my final mission, and it just turned to this massive war where I took down one of the people I was supposed to take down. They ended up helping me by taking somebody down. And then we met in the middle, had this massive brawl. And then they slipped off a rooftop and fell. And I was able to continue. But it was just it's so much fun. And I've actually hopped back into the multiplayer after to continue to play as Juliana, just because it reminds me a lot of that classic Assassin's Creed multiplayer that I really miss because we haven't gotten that in quite a long time. But there was some technical issues that we mentioned. Every time somebody's kind of invading in and out, the game slows down pretty hard. It wasn't too frequent, but it was there. But yeah, the game is awesome. And I loved Dishonored 1. I tried to get into Dishonored 2, and maybe it's just the time and place that I was playing it. I couldn't really get into it. Deathloop like hooked me immensely. And it's like one of those games, like I said, even, like 3 or 4 days after finishing it, I can't stop thinking about it.
That's awesome to know, because I know that we've talked about on the show before that I'm also in the same camp where I didn't really, I couldn't get into Dishonored 1 and 2, especially because I love the worlds of those games, but I don't really love the gameplay from those games. So knowing that you kind of are in the same boat, but ended up, coming away really enjoying this experience gives me high hopes that maybe I should try this one and give it a chance, because I've always given their games a chance before because I want to like them, whether it's Prey or Dishonored, but I've just never been able to do it. So I was like, maybe I'll wait on Deathloop and just not buy this one day one like all the others and then kind of go from there. But if you're saying it's awesome, I think I should definitely check it out at some point. I mean, we're kind of buried under a mountain of games at the moment where we're not even getting to play all the games we want to play. So I do think this is a game that I'm going to kind of wait on a little bit, despite the fact that it's awesome. But I'm excited to play it at some point.
I think the biggest thing for me with something like Dishonored, like I did finish the first Dishonored. It took me a while just because like I felt like in those games, like I'm the kind of person who likes to sneak around and be kind of, quiet and stealthy. And I feel like in those games, I felt like I was being punished when I was found, just because like generally speaking, like there were so many enemies around, you kind of got mobbed. I think Deathloop does a good job of making you feel more powerful even when you are found, the consequences aren't as drastic, just because you know that if you die, well, you're going to restart the day anyway. Yeah. And I mean, like you can kind of tackle things a different way. So I feel like that ability to kind of trial and error your way and to kind of try different play styles, and especially because the levels generally are quite like they're smaller compared to something like Dishonored, just because of, they have more of them. So I feel like I agree with you. Like I really liked the first Dishonored, couldn't get into the second one, but I think this game does enough differently that even if you weren't a massive fan of the gameplay of, the other Arcane games, this one might grab you.
Yeah, for sure. And it sounds like you're quite the speedrunner, Matt, getting 7 hours below, the target time that you see from every other outlet. But it's good to know that even if you aren't, a speedrunner, because I kind of joke about that because I put speedrunner in quotations essentially. But I mean, knowing that it's not a huge time investment, I think also helps maybe someone like me, maybe who was not super into their previous games, maybe give it a chance, because it's not a huge, I'm not wasting, hours and hours of time on this game. And to your point about the consequences as well, you also don't, the one that you didn't mention as well is getting the bad ending in Dishonored because you killed too many people because you got found too many times, right? So
exactly.
It doesn't sound like it punishes you in that way either, which I think is
no,
nice.
It doesn't.
It's probably a little bit better feeling. So sounds awesome. And I know, again, it's getting rave reviews across the board. I wouldn't be surprised if this is one of the front runners for Game of the Year at this point, from everything I'm seeing from other outlets. So very excited to check it out. But Matt, we got to talk about this other game we both played, although I didn't play it probably as much as you, but I don't know, you played a lot of Deathloop this week. Maybe you didn't get to play it that much either. Tales of Arise, the newest mainline entry in the Tales game, finally is here. I was so excited for this game to come out because I'm a huge Tales fan, going all the way back to Tales of Symphonia is where I got my start with the series, and I've pretty much played every Tales game that's come out ever since, except for a lot of the Japanese ones. Like those are the ones I haven't played a lot of yet. I've started diving in a little bit of those because some of them have translations, so I have been going back to those. But I've been very excited to play this, and I want to give you the floor first on this one because I've talked a lot about Tales on the show before because of the demo. So I want to know what you think of the final game and kind of gauge where you are with it right now.
Loving it. Absolutely loving it. Similarly to you, like I've been a Tales fan ever since back of Symphonia. Symphonia and Berseria and Vesperia are some of like my favorite games of all time. So coming into this one, I was a little bit like, I liked the demo, but I think I was a little bit like, is this really the next gen kind of Tales? You know what I mean? Like but it really is. It's flashy. It's loud. Like the combat feels so good. Chaining together those combos are so satisfying. I generally play on Japanese, like Japanese voice cast with subtitles on. Yeah. I heard so many good things about the dub on this one that I'm actually playing this one in English, and the voice cast is fantastic. Yeah. I feel like sometimes there are a couple cringy moments, just like with any kind of, JRPG, but like overall the dub cast is really good. I'm in the second realm. So like I would say probably I'm about 5 to 6 hours into the game. I didn't play as much as I wanted to because of Deathloop. Yeah. Like I literally went on Friday and I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna pick up Tales, and I got home from GameStop and then it was like, okay, it's Deathloop time. Never mind, not playing Tales all weekend. But like it totally worked out because like now I'm enjoying it. I'm loving it. It's beautiful. The characters are interesting. It's so cool, Ryan. Like I'm so happy with it so far. But what about you? Like, how much time have you spent with it? What do you feel so far?
So I'm actually only about 4 hours in and not in the second realm yet. I'm getting close to that point, but I'm not there yet. So I'm kind of still in what I would consider the game's prologue at this point. But I haven't had a lot of time to play it because we had a review code coming from Bandai Namco, but it got delayed due to some technical stuff that I'm not going to talk about here. So by the time it got here over the weekend, I'd started to play it. After our Halo Saturday session on Saturday, I basically sat and played it for 3 hours, was really excited about it, went to bed, and then I woke up in the morning and my TV had all kinds of issues. It was shutting off and on its own to the point where it just never turned on again. So I've actually pretty much been without a TV since Sunday. So I actually have a new TV coming later today. So for the most part, there's only so much I want to do as far as gaming is concerned on the 12-inch monitor that I have in the office. So I haven't really been playing it, even though this is the type of game where I was so excited to play it. I was like ready to sink, 20 hours into the game before our conversation today. But unfortunately, circumstances didn't really line up for me to do that. I did play a lot of Switch this week because of, the whole real life situation, but it's just one of those things where, this is the type of thing that just happens from time to time. I hadn't bought a new TV since 2016, so I'm very excited to get a new one. But so Tales, everything you said about it totally is how I feel about it. I love it. It just feels like such a natural evolution of the series. And I was really high on it after the demo. And I mean, the full game, at least from the section I played, hasn't disappointed me yet. I mean, there's still lots of game left, so there's still time for it. Maybe to maybe something goes wrong with the story or something like that, or maybe something disappoints me along the way. But so far, so good. Like, I'm really enjoying my time with it, and when I'm not playing it, I'm thinking about wishing I was playing it. Essentially, is what I'm thinking. Yeah. So,
and this Tales does something that anytime a JRPG or really any game does this, my heart just becomes so full. When you go to take a new side quest and you're like, never mind, I have everything you need right here. It doesn't make you go collect things all over again, which these days that becomes a major gripe for me. If it's like I have the things, why are you making me get more of the things that I already have? But Tales is like, oh, I need this. I have it. There you go. Quest over. Continue on. It's so satisfying. Oh my God, I love that feeling.
Yeah, and to your point about the cast as well. Like I'm like you. I play a lot of games with the Japanese voices, but I always try when there's a Tales game or like another JRPG like this. I always try with the English cast first, just to see what the English cast is like, and then because most games usually give you an option to switch midway. So I usually start with the English cast, and then if it's terrible or if I'm not really gelling with the cast, then I'll usually switch it midway through. But yeah, to your point, I think the English cast is actually really good. But I also think, because I played some of it with the Japanese voices, and they're also good too. So I mean, you've got two really good options regardless of what you prefer. So I'm really enjoying this game. But yeah, I'm not very far in it. I want to play more of it, and I can't wait to play more of this game later. So we'll probably be talking about it over the coming weeks. Plus, I know we have a discussion, like a review discussion planned at some point. We just don't know when that'll be because I don't know how long it's going to take for us both to beat it. Plus, I think Sean might be in there too. So we'll talk about that in the next couple of weeks as to when that's going to happen. But I'm pretty sure we're going to do some kind of larger discussion with Tales. We just don't know how it's going to happen. But anyways, I'm slamming the brakes on this conversation because it's time for some breaking news. This is the week of delays, Matt, because we've got a couple of delays to talk about this week. Starting with Dying Light 2 Stay Human, which has been delayed until February 4th, 2022. Guess what, Matt? Another game for February 2022. At least it's got something going for it in the sense that it's coming out at the beginning of the month. But at the same time, it comes out the week after Elden Ring. So I don't know how much this is doing for it. But at the same time, I talked about this with Sean on the Xbox Drive yesterday when this news first broke. But I feel like this is the type of situation where they wouldn't have delayed it to this window unless they really needed more time. This is not a strategy move because before it was supposed to come out the day before Halo Infinite was supposed to come out, which again is supposed to be one of the year's biggest releases. But so I don't think it was a strategic play like a lot of people were thinking, where it's like, oh, they just want to get out of the way of Halo. But I think they might have delayed into a worse window for this game because there are so many more games to play in February, especially for us on PlayStation, because I've already started to put together our spreadsheet for releases for next year, Matt, and there's a lot of them in February, but a lot of them are on PlayStation specifically. So we're affected the most by this. I mean, Horizon as well as a bunch of other games are coming out that month. So what do you think about this delay? And do you think it was just like they're desperate at this point and they just needed a new window? What do you think?
Yeah, I have absolutely no problem with the delay in and of itself. What my problem is like you said, they just moved into such an incredibly busy window. Like we talked about ad nauseum. January, February, and March of next year are just completely full. And like I have to wonder if do they know about anything that might be coming down the pipeline? Do they have sort of inside video game knowledge about what's coming later in the year that they look at February and they say, you know what? This is the time that we need to launch. Like right now, as things stand, March is busy, but February is messed. I don't know why they wouldn't have gone a little bit later, give them a little bit more time. I think that, I hope that this game is good. I just hope that them moving into this window doesn't hurt sales just because of how drastic competition is going to be at this time. Yeah,
for sure. Especially because, again, between Elden Ring, Horizon, Saints Row, like there's going to be so much choice in February and, late January. So I think that it's going to be a tough window for this game. At the same time, it is a horror game and we don't really have any other horror games coming out at that time. So I do think it does. It's a unique player in that space as far as the other games coming out around it. But yeah, I think it's going to be tougher for it to stand out, I think. But at the same time, again, you say that March is a little more open, but I was looking at the calendar before we were talking about this yesterday, and March is filling up really fast too with releases. Like I just think it's going to be a really busy year just in general for game releases next year, regardless of what time frame they kind of launch it in. So maybe there is no good window, and maybe they're just like, well, you know what, this is when the game's gonna be ready, so let's just do it. And it's not, at least it's not launching the same week as Horizon, at least for us PlayStation fans, right? So,
you're right in this fact that, January, we have some stuff at the end of January with Elden Ring and Pokemon, but and Rainbow Six, but you're right that we do have a couple weeks in between February 4th, which is Dying Light, and then Horizon on the 18th. So, maybe it's slipping into the perfect window right there, where a lot of the other releases are kind of a couple weeks apart. So who knows? Maybe this is the right window for it, but I guess we'll find out.
Hopefully. Anyways, but we're both, probably pretty excited to check out Dying Light 2. So we'll definitely be checking it out next year. It's just whether or not we play it day one, remains to be seen.
Exactly.
But I think we're excited for it. Next up, though, speaking of delays, this one's not so bad. This is Battlefield 2042, has been delayed until November 19th. They just need a touch more time with the game, although I don't know how much they can really do over the course of a month between kind of, when it was supposed to come out, because it was supposed to basically come out October 20th, I think, and it's coming out November 19th now. So I don't know how much of a difference this is going to make, but there must be some difference they feel it's going to make in order to do this. Or this might even be more of a strategic play on EA's end, because there's a lot of games coming out the same week as Battlefield in October. And maybe that's what they were going for with this one. But I know there's supposed to still be this open beta that's supposed to be coming as well. That was supposed to be out by now, but is not out. So maybe that's part of the reason why there's also this delay. Is maybe, the beta is coming in the next couple weeks, but then they want to actually have some semblance of change with the beta. Although I don't know what's going on with this game. Matt, what do you think about this news?
I think you're right in that it's strategic. It's a very strategic call. I'm having a further and further sinking suspicion that this game is not coming out this year.
Yeah.
Jeff Grubb kind of alluded to the fact that they announced the delay after the stock markets closed, and the next day their stock took a hit. It seems to be like this could be like a possibility. Let's push it here and hope for the best. But I think I really do think this game is going to get delayed further out, which is totally fine. Again, it seems like it's very, very ambitious. I don't think they want to launch without the promises that they've already made thus far with kind of the legacy mode and everything. So I kind of feel like that's probably where the bulk of their time is being put right now. Especially because, again, with Halo coming up just a couple of weeks later, you need to make a splash if you're a full price multiplayer only game coming out around that time, especially when Halo's multiplayer is going to be free.
Well, plus Call of Duty's out 2 weeks earlier too.
Exactly. So I feel like I wouldn't be surprised if this slips even more into the good old January, February of next year.
February 18th, 2022.
Exactly. So like, I wouldn't be surprised if this slips further. If it doesn't, well, like I'm stoked. Like I said, I'm a big Battlefield fan, and I'm planning on picking this one up. They've sold me on it the more and more I've seen. And it's one of the few multiplayer shooters that I really kind of invest a lot of time into. Mm-hmm. So I'm hopeful that it's going to come out, but I have a sneaking suspicion that we're not going to see it this year.
Yeah. It feels weird though if they already know it's probably not going to make this year though. Why then date it for this year? Like, I don't understand the logic behind that. Like, they should, don't get me wrong. I know that with their stock prices, they needed to, date it at some point out, especially because the stock prices kind of coincided with Jeff Grubb actually pointing out that, hey, that another game's getting delayed and people just assumed it was Battlefield. Although I saw a lot of people in the comments of that tweet also saying that they thought it was going to be Halo. But it turned out it was Battlefield instead. So I just don't understand the logic of putting this date on it, but then not releasing it this year, like then delaying it again.
I think this for me is kind of like a let's hope we can make this. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like if we unfortunately crunch and do whatever we need to do to kind of get there, like this is their kind of like optimistic window. Just because like you said, I don't know how much they're going to do in a month. Right? Like you would have to assume that like if they're focusing on bug fixes and stuff in a massive multiplayer game like this with the level of destructibility and everything else that they're doing, you'd have to imagine that they're making sure that everything is ready to go. So like you said, I feel like if it was a longer delay, then I think it would have made sense. But if it's only a month for a game of this size, I kind of like I said, to me, it's kind of like a let's hope and pray we can make this, but let's also plan for the situation where we can't. That's kind of what this feels like to me. I could be wrong though.
Makes sense. Yeah, it's just weird that they would announce a date and then 2 months later they would change it again. Like, why even do this delay then at this point? Like, that's what I'm curious about. But that's okay. That's true. Battlefield 2042. Hopefully it comes out this year. If it doesn't, it doesn't. We'll play it when it comes out eventually. So there we go. All right. Next up, this was kind of exciting news that just came out of nowhere yesterday. The PS5 September system update has finally arrived, bringing new features including SSD support, 3D audio support for TV speakers, and a new interface for trophies. So I'm going to bring in Seamus McIsaac at Famous Seamus, who asked us a question about this. And he asked, what is your favorite feature in the new PS5 update? So Seamus, I mean, I think that with this update, first of all, it got a lot of really great features attached to it. But obviously, I think the SSD support is probably the number one feature for me. Yes, I'm not rushing out right now to buy an SSD because I'm still kind of waiting a little bit longer before I take the plunge and buy one. But I do think that's one of the most important updates that we've gotten in a while. Like, this is something that should have been there, when the console launched. But I'm glad that it's finally here. And we're finally able to change the hard drives out. And again, I know people have been able to do this for a while with the beta version, but I know you and I both expressed interest in holding off from changing our hard drives and becoming part of the beta, especially with how many PS5s are out there right now. Like, we didn't want to risk, bricking our console or something like that, or causing any damage in some way. So we wanted to make sure it was safe. So I think for me, it's probably my favorite feature. But what about you, Matt? What do you think about this question? And of course, the update itself.
Yeah, I think the update's great. I think they're doing a lot. I'm glad to see one of this size with as much things as they promised within the first year of the console's life. I think it's the right time for it. Like similarly to you, I like the expansion. It's not something like I'm going to be doing right now, just because I think it's just way too overpriced to do it right now, and I'd rather play the delete and download game for now than kind of upgrading. So for me, the thing that I'm actually most excited about is the control center customization. I love that we can finally move the bottom around to kind of, instead of going all the way to the right to try to turn the console off. Like, I'm glad that is there, that they listened, that they've now added that functionality to it to let you play with the layout the way that you want to be and to look, rather than taking an unnecessary steps to kind of do what you need to do. So I think that's my favorite part of it. I'm glad that it's there, and it's more customizability is not a bad thing.
Yeah, for sure. At this point, though, the one thing we're really missing from the control center is being able to hold down, the PlayStation button to have it, go to the power menu. But yes. But other than that, you can move the power button a lot closer to where the cursor comes up, so it's a little bit you're closer You're closer to the ideal reality where it's like it's very easy to shut off the console rather than going all the way to the end of the bar, the control center bar, to basically get to the power settings. So
I had a quick question, Ryan, before we move off kind of this thing. I think that the accolades thing is something that I've entirely forgotten about when it comes to the PS5 UI and their system base. I don't think I've ever even gone looking for it. Have you interacted with the accolade stuff at all?
No.
Right?
I had forgot. I was like you. I had forgotten that it even existed until, a month ago, where I was going through the menus on my PS5 to do something that I can't remember, and I just saw it there, and I was like, oh, that's interesting, and then just moved it away. And no, I mean, and to be fair, I don't play a ton of multiplayer stuff on PlayStation 5, unless it's Final Fantasy 14, which doesn't use that system anyways. So for the most part, it exists, it's there. I don't know how many people are actually using it. It kind of reminds me of like the system on Xbox Live back in the day, where you would you attach to your user profile, you would have like your little report card there that would talk about like how many percentage of user feedbacks you'd get that would talk about you like trash talking or something like that.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of that, but just no one ever used it on Xbox, so I'd imagine that most people don't use it here or forgot that it even exists.
If anybody does, please let us know in the comments. I'm so curious to know if anybody's actually interacting with this any space, because like I said, until I was reading this, then with the blog post about what coming, I was like, wait, what? Oh yeah, this is a thing. So if anybody does use it all, let us know and we'll talk about it next week, because I'm very, very curious to see if anybody's interacting with it. For sure.
Also, I got to give it a huge shout out to the new trophy interface, which looks way better. It's just so much easier to sort through trophies now than it was before. So thank God they've overhauled that. But last piece of news this week, because it was kind of a shorter news week this week, because we did have the giant dump of news last week. A new Midnight Black edition of the Pulse 3D wireless headset was announced. It will launch on October 22nd. So just like it's the same as the white ones, except they're black now to coincide with the new black controller. Matt, I think both you and I already have these headphones. So I don't know if we're the type of people that want to go out and, rush out and get the black ones. But what do you think about this?
I think it looks dope. I think, just having that, like we talked about the different colors and stuff a few weeks ago, but I think it looks really cool. I think it looks sleek. I don't think it's going to be anything I'm going to rush out to buy day one. I think it'll be something that like once I'm done with this, these Pulse headphones, when I do start looking for a new pair, I will go and pick up the black ones. I think that'll be the next one I buy. I do like the kind of, I do like the black on the headphones more than the white. I think they look awesome. What about you, Ryan? What are your thoughts and feelings?
Yeah, pretty much the same. Where it's like, if my white ones break down or something happens to them, maybe I get black ones at that point. But who knows? Maybe there's a whole set of rainbow colors at that point, because they kind of did this to celebrate the release of the black controller. I wonder if this means that they'll do like different headset colors for like other controller colors. Like I have the red controller here. Like I wonder if they do like a red one at some point that's like the same color as like the red controller, or if they do come out with other color controllers, like maybe they do other headsets to go along with us, or maybe one day they release faceplates for the console that match these colors, Matt. Maybe,
Ryan.
That's too good of an idea.
In a perfect world, like I still don't understand why they're not like. It's just like we talked about. They've like within the first year so far, they've dropped 2 colors of the controller and 1 color of the headset for whatever reason, rather than giving more people more options, and nothing about faceplates. But I just want to know when Sony's going to step up and let us actually customize these things a little bit more, because I just don't understand why they're leaving money on the table.
Yeah, I mean it's free money. I mean, why not?
Exactly.
I mean, yes, it's going to cost money to produce those parts, but I mean, people will buy them. Like they'll fly off the shelves. Unlike the 360 faceplates, which, they were fine, but like they didn't, you couldn't totally customize the whole console, which I think is why people didn't, pick those up. But anyways, sorry, go ahead.
We'll see. Yeah, I just want to see like, why can't I have like Spider-Man on one side and Persona on the other? Like these faceplates are all like, they're so easy to take on and off. Like why not use the functionality already? But we'll see, Ryan. We'll see.
But that's how they're going to get you to buy another PlayStation 5, Matt. They'll sell you to PlayStation, the Spider-Man one or the Horizon one or whatnot, which is dumb, because they have a console that's very easy to take the plates off. Like it doesn't make any sense to me why they wouldn't just sell those. Anyways. Let's let some of our friends into the car with us. It is time for the carpool. So listeners at home, if you would like your question read on the show, if you would like to be part of the show, there's a number of ways to do that. Number one, we put out a questions post every single Wednesday on Twitter at YouMakeCapris on Twitter. You can follow us there. And just ask your question there, or you can join our Discord. It's free to join. The link is in the show notes, and you can ask a question there in the PlayStation Drive section as well. You can leave a video, like a comment on YouTube with your question as well, and we'll read it on the show as well. Just like Jedi Master Ren did on Discord, and he asked the question, "Hey Matterford, see what I did there, lol. What's the selling point you would give for Tales of Arise for someone who is new to the series, but dipping their toes into JRPGs of the same nature?" So, Matt, for someone who's new to JRPGs or even new to Tales, like, what do you think the main selling point for a game like Tales of Arise is to someone like that?
I think the biggest thing, and I like speaking to a lot of people who don't really play many JRPGs or RPGs, I feel like turn-based combat can be a major sticking point for people along with random battles. And I feel like Tales of Arise handles both of these things very well because A, there are no random battles. You can actually see all the monsters on the screen, so you can choose whether you want to engage or not. And the fighting system isn't turn-based. So like, I feel like, some people say it's too boring or it's too slow, which I understand to a degree. But like the action combat system with Tales is unique enough that like you are able to, it's almost like more of like a fighting game mixed with an action game where it's like, the way that you chain combos together, you totally can make these massive long combos, but you can also, with how capable the AI has been so far, like you can totally kind of, take your time to learn the systems and the AI will help you kind of through the fights. I think that the world is beautiful. And like I said, because of how they handle things like side quests, or if you have the stuff already, like they take out a lot of the tedium that I find that you can find in a lot of JRPGs, which, things like the grind and things like that, people kind of, fall off of it. A lot of reviews that I read, they said they didn't really have to grind too much. That's not really much of a problem. But again, like I feel like the combat is the kind of major thing for Arise. I feel like it's kind of easy to get lost in the world once you're already in it. So if you take a look at the trailers and the combat looks interesting to you, then I think even if you're relatively new to the genre, I think Tales is different enough than the kind of contemporary JRPG, while also still feeling like that. That you can kind of lose yourself in it regardless of whether you like them a lot or not.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point with the combat in particular, which feels like it's got the biggest overhaul over everything from the previous Tales games. I mean, and to be fair, it's been a long time since we had one. I was talking about this with Sean yesterday, but in theory, the last Tales game we got, Tales of Berseria, was essentially a PlayStation 3 game that just happened to be on PlayStation 4. Like that's kind of how it turned out. So we haven't really had one in a generation. So this version in particular not only feels like a big overhaul, both from a visual standpoint, but even the way they tell the story is a little bit different than usual with Tales, combined with the combat is just way different. And it feels much closer to modern games than a lot of the older Tales games. Even Tales of Berseria, again, just felt like the combat from, a PlayStation 3 era game in a lot of ways, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing. But I do think for someone who's new to the JRPG genre, or just RPGs in general, like it might be a bit of a turnoff for them. In the same way that, Tales of Arise isn't. Combined with the fact that I think the visuals themselves are very pretty. Like this is a very pretty game, and the story itself seems like it's really cool, and I love the way that they did the storytelling this time around, especially with the skits in particular, because I know skits were like a big turnoff for some people back in the day for older Tales games, where like it would be like 3 little still pictures basically talking to each other on the screen with like little animated faces. But this time around, they do these like comic book panels, and there's some talking there. Like they're mostly just standing still while they're talking, mind you, but it is more visually pleasing now than the old skit systems, and you can use the skits to basically learn more about the individual characters and see kind of their side banter after like specific battles and stuff like that. So it's totally optional too, so you don't even need to do those if you want to. So yeah, I think definitely, I think it's probably a great place to start for kind of beginner RPGs. But I know, and if you want to know more about kind of what RPGs are maybe good to start with and whatnot, Jedi Master Ren, Garrett and I on the RPG Cave, selfless plug of course, are doing a episode in a few weeks called the RPG Starter Guide, where we're actually going to be talking about kind of the 10 essential games that basically any person who's new to RPGs should play. So we're going to be doing that as a topic in a few weeks. So you'll definitely want to make sure to check out that episode if you want to learn more about, maybe which RPGs are good to kind of start with. So there you go. And last question of the week comes to us from Plastic Hearts Podcast at Plastic Heart Pod. And they asked the question, just heard about the Dying Light 2 delay from your tweet. So that's cool. Totally passed me by. Question for you. Arcane really excels at super unique experiences with a very weird and interesting story, but it seems to not transcend into strong sales. Will Deathloop be any different? So do you think that, sales are going to be strong for Deathloop, Matt? Because I know that Arcane traditionally has never been like a huge selling company for any of their games. Like the Dishonored games never sold well. Prey didn't really sell super well, but they always had like this hardcore fan base that kind of followed them. But what do you think? Do you think the fortunes might be different for Deathloop, or what do you think?
I think so. I think because of the amount of marketing that we've seen for it, I feel like it's been marketed way, way harder than any Arcane game of the past. Like I don't think I've ever seen as much for either of the Dishonored or for Prey as much as we've seen for Deathloop. On top of the fact that it's a PS5 exclusive, sure, it's on PC as well, but like I feel like a lot of people who are looking for a reason to play something on their PlayStation 5, it's a shooter, it's an easy buy-in for somebody who might not be familiar with Arcane as a whole. And as we've seen, PS5 games, especially exclusive games, have been selling incredibly well this year. Returnal sold above numbers, apparently. I'm sure Ratchet's doing well. Like they're normally found in the NPD's top sales. So I feel like with it being a PS5 exclusive, with how much marketing we've seen of it, and especially because we don't really have anything PS5 exclusive coming for the next little while. Yeah. Like it's pretty empty until Horizon. In terms of their first party or even, exclusives. So I feel like it positions itself in a way where coming up on Black Friday, coming up on Christmas, coming up on the next little while where there's not going to be hey, look at this PlayStation game you need to play. I think Deathloop is going to fill that slot pretty easily. And I do think that it's going to sell much better than probably a number of their past games, possibly even combined, just because I feel like PlayStation gamers go out but they buy first party or they buy exclusives quite easily. And I feel like this is going to probably, and again, the word of mouth around the game is strong. So I think so. What about you, Ryan? Do you think that this is going to sell better?
Yeah, I think so. First of all, besides this, we have Kenna next week. And then after that, it is, like you said, pretty dry for PlayStation 5 exclusives. So if you want like a big exclusive this fall and you already own Ratchet and Spider-Man from last year and Demon's Souls, then yeah, this is definitely the game that you're probably going to pick up if you want like the next kind of PlayStation 5 exclusive game this fall. In fact, what they're doing with the marketing that you touched on there kind of reminds me of what Nintendo's doing right now with Metroid, because they're really pushing Metroid Dread hard at this point with a bunch of different trailers that are showing off all kinds of stuff from that game, which of course I've been staying the heck away from because they spoil a lot from the game from what I've heard. So I think that after seeing Deathloop so many times, we chuckled last week on the show because we didn't want to see any more Deathloop because we felt like we had seen enough. But maybe you were onto something with what you're just talking about. Like maybe they needed to do this in order for this game to sell what they wanted to sell. Like maybe to take kind of Arcane's numbers and bring them to kind of a whole new level. And I do definitely think it's going to get a bump, to your point, that because it is a PlayStation 5 exclusive. And I mean, we have records from sales like all PlayStation 5 exclusives that are exclusive to the console sell pretty well. Like whether it's Ratchet, because Ratchet actually did sell well from what we've been seeing with the numbers to a lot of the other games that are exclusive to the console as well. So yeah, I think it's going to sell well because of that, especially because there's enough PlayStation 5s out there now to basically make a big dent as far as that's concerned. And the word of mouth definitely helps as well. Although again, that didn't really help Dishonored because Dishonored 2, for example, had like really positive word of mouth too, and that didn't really help the game at all. I also think too the style of the game, I think it's going to help with sales too, because it is like a first-person shooter that again has some unique mechanics to it, but it's in probably a more approachable genre than what we saw from Dishonored, which was this like steampunky kind of like stealth game that had like melee sword combat. I think that just by the nature of it being a first-person shooter, I think appeals to more people just naturally. So I think that might be what's going on with this.
One question that I have, Ryan, before we move off this, because it's something that I was kind of thinking about and something that I've heard from some people. I've heard some people talk about how like, oh, you know what? It's Arcane, which is by nature, then Bethesda, which is now Microsoft, which is Xbox. Do you think that there's a potential that sales might be impacted to some degree of people just saying, you know what? I'm just going to wait for it to come to Game Pass, or I'm going to wait for it to come to Xbox in a year, theoretically? Do you think that some people might just hold off because of how many games we're getting now, how many games are upcoming? Do you think that could impact sales? Do you think that could be a problem?
I don't imagine it would be that much because how many people own a PlayStation 5 and a Series X? Like, not many of us. Like, I do. But I'm not most people, like, especially because of how hard they are to find, combined with the price. Like, that's a very small camp of people. So, I mean, yes, I can see the argument for that. Assuming, like, let's say you're a PlayStation 5 owner now, but you think you're going to buy a Series X next year or even this Christmas with the Halo bundle, for example, then yeah, I can kind of get that sentiment, because I'm the type of person, I've talked about it before on the show, where I thought for a while maybe I'd wait for this to come to Game Pass and then play it then. But because of what I'm hearing about it and how this game might actually be up my alley, like, I think that's kind of convinced me to maybe jump into it a little bit earlier than normal. But again, at the same time, I'm not in the position most PlayStation 5 owners are in, because again, that's really the base that this is being targeted to.
True.
The only people that might hold off on this are people who play on PC, because it's not on PC Game Pass yet. But I imagine at some point it will be. We got a question about this yesterday on the Xbox Drive, where I think it was Todd Oxtra was asking us why Deathloop wasn't on PC Game Pass right away, and we think it might just have to do with the exclusivity, because on PS5, like, there might be something in the clause that says even though it can come to PC, it can't be on Game Pass until the exclusivity window is over. We suspected it might be something like that. So, but it will come to PC Game Pass eventually. So it's just going to be interesting when that happens and how that's going to affect sales more than anything. So I think the people that were going to buy it on PlayStation 5 are just going to buy it on PlayStation 5 anyways. I don't think they're going to wait for Game Pass. But anyone on PC is where that might get a little bit dicey.
Cool. Yeah, I think you're right.
Cool. Well, anyways, Matt, that's the show today. But before we go, Matt plugs go.
Yeah, you can find me over on Twitter at burnout_Matt, and you can find all of our stuff at youtube.com/burnoutbrighter, where we have a bunch of reviews, our podcast, and a bunch of other cool stuff.
You guys are putting up so much reviews, Matt. I can't even keep up.
Oh my God.
There's too much. As for me, you can find me on Twitter at Ryan Turford. You also find us on Twitter at YouMeCapris, and on YouTube at youtube.com/YouMeCapri, and on podcast services around the globe. So for Matt Sawinski, I'm Ryan Turford. This has been episode 18 of the PlayStation Drive, and we out. The PlayStation Drive is fueled by patrons over at patreon.com/YouMeCapri, and I want to say thank you to each and every one of our patrons from the bottom of my heart from your support across all of our content. And let's start by thanking our CaPremium producers, Dallas Ford, Lee Navarro, the fearless leader of the Phoenix Overdrive Extra Life team, and Johnathan Brown over at youtube.com/PM Entertainment. Our platinum producers, Robby Miller and TruckerSloth, and our gold members, ARGO, Brendan Myers, Dallas Robbins, Emily O'Kelly, Heather Boney, James Johnson, Joel Brooks, Jose Jimenez, Mac Time, Benjicong, Marcus O'Neill, RJ Kern, Dannohh, Skinny Matt, Mr. and Mrs. Nasty Boots, Fuji, and Xavier Reyes. Thank you all for all of your support.